Welcome to the Heart of a Viking. This channel offers elementary art lessons taught by Mrs. Minto from the Cape Henlopen School District in Delaware. I look forward to virtually creating with you. There are new lessons posted weekly. Subscribe to the channel to make sure you don't miss a single one. So go grab your art supplies and your thinking caps and let's begin.
Artists. So today we're going to begin a circle weaving. I really want our circle weaving to have odd numbered notches or little triangle cuts from the edges to hold our pieces of warp thread. So to do that, we need a plate. My plate is a pretty thick paper plate. It's made by the company Chinet. It's kind of thick. It's not like a really soft, flimsy one. So you want to make sure you have a nice thick one too. And I like mine to be paper because we're actually going to be coloring on these. So it's easier to color on the paper ones than the ones that have wax on them. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you how big my plate is. My plate is about 6.5 inches across, which is kind of on the small side. This would be like for like a piece of cake at a birthday party, like that sort of size. You can definitely make yours bigger. I don't know if I'd go much smaller than this, but you can definitely go bigger if you want to. Okay, so now that we have our paper plate and we know how big it is, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to be measuring around the edges here. And what's most important with this measuring part is that we end up with an odd number of little marks. So as I go around, I'm going to be making a little mark every 1.5 inches because for my plate, that seemed to work out really good. So I made a little mark at the beginning of my roller. Then I made a little mark at 1.5 inches. Then I'm going to move over and make a little mark at 1.5 inches. And then move my roller over and make a little mark at 1.5 inches. And I'm going to keep doing this all the way around my plate. All right, so now I'm going to count them because I'm back to the beginning. I'm going to put my finger on the one I'm starting with. That's my number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. That worked out perfect. I only want to make sure I have an odd number. The number doesn't matter. It could be 9, it could be 15, it could be 21. As long as it's an odd number, it's perfectly fine. Okay, so now I'm going to take a pair of scissors and I'm going to be making little triangle cuts towards those little marks I just made. So that little mark becomes like the middle of my triangle. That's called the apex, the top of my triangle here. So I'm just making a little slice this way, right to my little mark, and a little slice this way. These triangles do not have to be exactly the same, but they should be similar. So I'm going to keep going around, making these little slices from each mark that I made with my ruler. Okay, super. Now I'm going to clean this up a little bit and come back with a few extra supplies. Okay, so now I'm going to take my little, I have like a sharp needle here, and I'm going to poke a hole right about where I think the center is. It doesn't have to be perfectly perfect. If you want it to be perfectly perfect, you could measure and divide in half. So I'm going to take my needle and just poke it all the way through. Then I'm going to take a pencil, any kind of pencil. I happen to have a green one here, and I'm going to twist, twist, twist like I'm drilling a hole, and I'm going to poke it all the way through. See how I'm going between my fingers so I don't actually poke my fingers all the way through and out the other side because I wanted the hole to be a little larger. It's just easier to start with the sharp needle and then let your pencil go right into that space. Perfect. Okay, so now the next thing I'm going to do is color this. We're doing a marine life theme here. So I'm actually going to be making mine blue, like the water that's behind my fish that's swimming in the water. But you can make yours whatever you want. If you're not doing a marine life theme at home, you can do yours whatever color you want. So I'm going to start by just making mine blue and making it look like it has waves on it. Okay, when it's time to color, I'm going to be using my crayons, but if you have some access to some paint or a different type of supply you'd rather use, that's perfectly fine too. Now, I'm going to be coloring the back of my plate, the part that's raised up here, not the inside where you would put the food, but I'm doing the part where it's raised up. So I'm going to take some of my blues and I'm just going to make it look like water. Now, coloring on a paper plate is not nearly as easy as coloring on a flat piece of paper, so just do the best you can. As you can see, I've missed a lot of spaces too, but I honestly did the best I could working on the surface that I'm provided with. So it is okay if it is not 100% perfect or to the quality that you would normally be coloring on a flat piece of paper. Okay, so next I'm going to put my crayons away here. And I'm going to switch to some kind of yarn or string. So I have this thin string that I use for all of our weaving projects here at HOB, but you could also use a piece of yarn. It would work just as well too. All right, so on the end, I'm going to go ahead and push it up through the bottom so that I can see it right here. And then I'm going to connect it to this end right here. And I'm going to tie this in a little knot. And if you need help tying that into a nice tight knot, ask a grown-up or older brother or sister or somebody else that's close by to help you make that into a nice knot. I'm actually tying mine about 4 times because I do not want to run the risk of that coming untied. Super. Now I'm going to take that little knot and tuck it down underneath onto the inside. This is going to be our working surface here. All right, so now I need to cut off a length of this yarn. So I'm just going to cut it nice and long. Okay, so I've cut my piece of string about 9 feet long. So what I'm going to do now that I have my little knot right here and my piece of string is on the inside, I'm going to begin going up and down the hole that I have in the center into each of those little knots. All right, so I'm already here. Now I'm going to go to the opposite side here and through the little triangle cut, and then I'm going to go down through this hole. So I need to find the end of my string, which is quite long here, the end of my string down this little hole. Now, if you want to use that sewing needle, you absolutely can. I don't normally. I just take my time, poke it through. It feels like I'm sewing, and that's awesome. Okay, so I pull that through and I move that, make sure it's right in that little notch and pull it nice and tight. Awesome. So now I pick another one. So I'm going to pick this one right here, and it truly does not matter what order you do these in. You can do them around the circle, you can do them across from each other. It truly doesn't matter which order you go in. So then down through the middle, pull it through, and make sure that's in a different triangle. There we go. Super duper. Then another one. So out to the next one. I like to hold that right here so that my string doesn't get too crazy. And down through the little hole and pull it through in the center. Make sure that the strings are still in their places and keep them nice and tight. Okay, now the next one, and I'm just going to keep going until I've done this through every single one of those little triangle cuts. I have one little tip for you. If your piece of yarn or string keeps coming unraveled here, you can either use a sewing needle or you can use a little piece of tape that is wrapped around nice and snug to create a little protector and almost like a little weaving needle for yourself, little sewing needle for yourself, just like that. Just make sure it's nice and pinched and nice and tight. Okay, here we go. Keep going. Okay, so now I'm going to go back to the inside. I had considered also coloring the inside of mine, but I decided not to in the end. Here's the little end that from the beginning of mine that I tied with the one piece of string. So I'm going to use that little end again to help me make another knot for the end of my string now. And I'm going to do the same thing I did before. I'm going to tie several knots, 3 or 4, not just one. Okay, and then I'm going to trim off this long piece of string that was left over. There we go. Okay, so that's perfect. That's exactly what we want to get started with our weaving. All right, so now we're moving on to the actual weaving portion of our project. So for the weaving, I'm going to be using one of the weaving needles I have here at school. If you don't have one of these, you totally don't need it. But instead, you might want to put a piece of that tape around the end here so that it doesn't come unraveled. All right, so I'm going to take my little piece of yarn here and shove it through the eye of the needle, just like that. You can put one little knot on the end of your needle, just like that if you want. I don't like to put more than one though because it gets stuck and I don't really want to put more than one. And the little tail should be very short. It should not be any longer than your pointer finger. Oh, so I just made it here. It's nice. It's about the same as my pointer finger, so that's perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to be doing a technique called the tabby weave. The tabby weave is when you take your piece of yarn and you go under, then over, then under, then over, then under. And I'm going to pull that through just so that little tail is right there. And then I went under, then over, then under, then over, then, oh, Mrs. Minto, I missed one. Okay, well, no problem. I have my string right here, so I can just add one more little piece of string that goes just to that space. Oh man, I'm so glad I saw that before I got much further. Okay, so all I did was I just pushed my piece of string through, and I'm going to tie a couple of knots here. No big deal. No one's going to know except for you and me. We're going to be the only two that know that that happened. But I'm actually kind of glad. I like when accidents like that happen. In my world, I call those happy accidents because it's always an opportunity to learn. I feel like scientists use those same kind of happy accidents to come up with their life-saving and world-changing experiments and inventions. All right, perfect. Okay, and take two, back to weaving. All right, so I have my needle on here. Okay, here we go. Under, over, under, over, under, over. And that's about as far as I can reach with my needle. So I'm just gonna go ahead and pull that through. Make sure my little tail stays where I started. And then I'm gonna keep going, under, over, under, over, under, over, all the way around the circle. Perfect. And then I'm going to actually take this little end here and just tuck it through the back. So he's just going to come and poke through the back. If you want, you could tie him to that white piece of string that you have on the inside. You don't really need to. He would be okay by himself without tying him, but if you want to, you could tie him in there. All right, he's the only one that's going to get poked through like that. Okay, now here I go again. I ended with over, so under, over, under, over, over, under, over, under. And I'm just continuing my pattern. So all I do is I check where I am. So I went under this guy here. So now I know I'm going to go over this guy and under this warp thread. By the way, the white threads are called the warp threads. All weavings have a warp thread. And I think that the warp threads are more important than the actual weaving because the warp threads are kind of like the bones in your body. Could you imagine your body without bones? You would totally fall apart. You'd be the little ball of jelly on the floor of muscles and all kinds of things. So these are kind of like the bones of the piece of artwork. And if they break or if they are not strong, then your weaving isn't as strong. So those white warp threads are pretty important little guys here. All right, so all I'm doing is I'm doing this tabby weave under, over, all the way around. I'm gonna keep going until I run out of this blue. Okay, so I'm kind of at the end here. My little, my piece that was as long as, I called it my little tail, that's about as long as my finger is starting to get like trapped whenever I finish my weaving. So I'm going to go ahead and loosen my knot here. And I'm actually going to tie my next color right to this one. I'm going to go to white next. And so I'm going to take these two pieces, place them together. I'm going to keep them nice and tight here, create a loop, by using one of my fingers to create a loop here. This little tail that's sticking out, it should be laying on top of the 2 pieces of string underneath. I'm going to take them, tuck them under, and pull them right up through that hole. Okay, so take them both, tuck them under, and pull them right up through that hole. So I'm going to pinch them with these guys. This hand is going to grab the long pieces back here and just pull. Nice. And when it does, I create a little knot right there. If those little pieces of string are bothering you, no big deal. We'll tuck them under our weaving and you won't even be able to notice that they're there. Okay, so I'm just gonna continue now because that blue had run out. Whoops, wait a second, Mrs. Minto, you need to load this up. Oh, this has yellow on the end. So I need to decide, do I wanna leave the yellow? I'm actually thinking I'm gonna take it off because I only wanted blues and whites in my design. Okay, so now I'm gonna take this end. This is my new weaving end, because I got a new piece of string, and I'm going to tie that same kind of knot, make the little loop, push the end through there, make sure that this little tail isn't longer than my finger. I'm ready to go. Okay, here we go. So I ended with over, now I need to go to under right here. Under, over, under, over. And I just pick up right where I left off. And when I get to the point where those tails are bothering me, like they're getting stuck, I just have to be gentle. They're only going to bother me for a couple of rounds before they get tucked under and disappear. All right, so this is the point where they're going to start to disappear. I'm actually going to take them and shove the 2 ends down underneath the blue part that I've already been weaving. I'm just kind of pushing it, not really doing anything fancy here. There we go, gone. Nobody will ever know except you and me. Now you'll start to notice as you start working your way out towards the edges of your plate, you'll have to change colors more often because now your circles, your loops around are larger. So you'll find that you have to change colors more often. I'm noticing I'm almost already ready to change to my next color. Okay, so that's gonna be that. So now I'm gonna take another color. I'm gonna go back to blue. I'm gonna create something like a pattern here and take my 2 ends, line them up. There we go. Pull that nice and tight, create a loop. There's my little loop. These 2 pieces are on top. I'm gonna take them under, sneak them up through the little hole there, grab them. I'm gonna switch them to my right hand. There we go. And then pull on the other side, nice and tight. And we are ready. So now blue is my new color. I'm gonna go take the blue, shove it through my eye of my needle, and create that same kind of knot, making sure that tail is not longer than my pointer. It's not. And now I'm ready to go again. And when that knot gets in my way, I'll just tuck it under like I did before. Artists, now that the weaving is all done, you just take that little end and tuck it in. Nobody will ever know, and it'll be just fine tucked in there. Your weaving could be done here. These are kind of pretty just by themselves. However, we're going to go one step further and we're going to turn this into a fish. So to turn this into a fish, I'm going to start by adding some fins. So I'm going to take a piece of contrasting paper, so something a little bit different. I'm going to use orange here to go with my blue and white fish. I'm going to start by making him a little fin that comes from the top of his body. So again, you can pre-draw it or you can just go ahead and cut. I think I'm just going to go ahead and cut off a piece here and cut my little guy a cute little fin. And I can use crayons or markers or something to add some details if I want to. Again, not necessary, but you totally can if you'd like. Okay, so now I'm going to take a little bit of glue and I'm going to be putting this right here. And I just want to measure, yep, it looks pretty good. Okay, so I'm going to put a little bit of glue on the bottom, just like that. And I can either glue it to my piece of yarn or I can glue it to the pieces of warp thread and paper plate. I'm going to try and go for the paper plate and warp thread. So I'm going to put that one right there. Hold it for a couple of seconds, or if you don't feel like holding it and you want to move on, you can always close your glue bottle and use that as a holding tool instead while you make the next part. So I think I'm going to go ahead and start making his tail fin, and I want his tail fin to be, let me draw this one. All right, so I want it to be like this sort of shape. Okay, that should be on there now pretty well. All right, so I'm gonna add a little bit of glue to this guy. Same idea, a little bit of glue. I'm gonna do top and bottom and see if I can sneak that right under that piece of yarn. Oh, that was better. You know what, that's a good idea. A little bit of glue on top is a good idea too. That one's pretty stuck. Oh my gosh, can you see my fish coming? All right, so next I'm gonna use, oh my gosh, that little piece of scrap is perfect for a little fin right here. I'm just gonna change the back of it and make it a little bit scalloped and add a couple of those little lines. Oh my gosh, this guy's coming together so good. Okay, nice. And I think I want to round this off. I don't think I want it so pointy. Okay, then a little bit of glue on this guy. I'm gonna put it right here in the center. Oh my gosh, love it. And I only put glue on like this end of it so it sticks up a little bit. Oh my gosh, that's looking so good. All right, next for my little fish. Some fish have little fins at the bottom. I actually might use this to make like just a small little fin down here. How would that look? Yeah, I think I'll do that. Something like that. Yes, exactly. Okay. And all of these fins are just basically triangles that have a curved side or two. They're nothing too fancy, and if it's tricky for you to make these kinds, you can always just make triangles. No big deal. Oh my gosh, I'm loving it. Okay, so now his little mouth. All right, so let's see. Gosh, you know what? I love that story called Rainbow Fish. I read it to some students here at HOB, and he has the biggest lips. And what's really cool is they're shaped like a heart, which is also kind of cool. So I think I'll use that as my inspiration for my lips here for my fish. There we go. All right, let's just do a little test here. Let me draw that line in the middle. Oh my gosh, look at those big lips he's got. Holy guacamole. All right, so let me just darken that up a little bit. Oh man. Okay, and then a little bit of glue. And you can have fun with this, whatever you think is best for your fish. Oh, I love it so much. Okay, then my last thing is going to be an eye. Now I probably should go get a white piece of paper for the eye, but what I think I'm going to do is I think I'm going to make the back of it that color, which is orange, to match. I'm going to add the white part with my crayon. Let's see if this works. How dark can I get it? Got my fingers in the way here. That's pretty white. Okay, I like that. Whoopsie. There we go. And I think I'll put a black line around it. And then the black pupil looking forward. Okay, a little bit of glue. And this kind of glue is not going to dry instantly, so you're going to want to give it a couple of minutes before you touch it. OMG, look how cute he is. Ah, there you go, artist. That is your woven. There you go, artist. That is your radial woven fish. I hope you had a great time with this. I could not be more happy with my little fish, and I am so excited to see the fish that you come up with. So make sure you take a photo, post them on Art Sonia so that I can see it and leave you a message too. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I hope you really enjoyed making your fish, and I'll see you back here next time at the Heart of a Viking.
HOB artists, don't forget to hop on over to Art Sonia to upload a photograph of your piece of artwork to your art portfolio. I can't wait to see it.